These are the iLearning chapters 23 and 24 by Kara Floyd and Skylar Watrous. There are two major conflicts in this chapter, which are Victor versus self and Victor versus the monster. So first of all, he has a conflict with himself because he blames himself for all the deaths of his family members, so he struggles with this guilt and dedicates the rest of his life towards finding the monster to avenge them, and he kind of loses his identity in this. And then for Victor versus the monster plays games with him by leaving him trails and clues on how to catch him, and it ends up being like a 2-month-long just like chase until eventually Victor can just no longer go on and he dies from everything that he's endured. This quote kind of contrasts the conflict that Victor faced. It says, "Seek happiness in tranquility and avoid ambition, even if it be only the apparently innocent one of the distinguishing yourself in science and discovery." And so it just really contrasts the conflict that he went through with himself and the monster, because it speaks of tranquility and avoiding like the science that he pursued. This analysis comes from the chapter of How to Read Literature Like a Professor that talks about violence in literature. And so there's two different types in these two chapters of Frankenstein. There's physical and narrative. So physical would be, a good example would be whenever the monster kills Elizabeth, because there was like physical violence in her murder. And then for narrative violence would be Victor's father just dying of grief, kind of like the after effects. So there wasn't like an actual like physical thing that killed him, but more like he died of a broken heart. And so both of these had profound effects on Victor as well. This quote really emphasizes the violence, not only in the novel but also in these two chapters. And it says, "The monster showed unparalleled malignity and selfishness and evil. He destroyed my friends, and he ought to die." And so this not only talks about the monster's violence whenever it says he destroyed my friends, meaning Victor's family, but also whenever Victor says he ought to die, that also shows violence. And so they were just kind of sort of violent towards each other. This comes from another chapter in How to Read Literature Like a Professor, titled "It's More Than Just Rain or Snow," and it talks about how weather is more than just whatever weather is going on. And so we focused on the part where Victor is chasing the monster through kind of like the Arctic area, and where very few men go. And so the weather in this part clearly corresponds with the character's like attitudes and foreshadows what is about to come, which is Victor's death. And so where he is, it's cold and isolated. Just like him, he's kind of isolated himself from the world in his search for the monster. And so it also provides like a sense of hopelessness, which is very evident in Victor's behavior. This quote just kind of expands on what I said before. It says, "A destructive and almost endless journey across the mountainous ices of the ocean amidst cold that few of the inhabitants can long endure, in which I, the native of a genial and sunny climate, cannot hope to survive." And so what's especially important in this one is whenever he says could not hope to survive, meaning that he kind of expected to die and he didn't really care at this point. And he also describes it as a destructive and endless journey through the ice. And so like I said before, it's just really isolated, and at this point he doesn't really care if he lives or dies. So these are our 3 questions for these chapters. How is Victor's hunt for the monster more harmful to himself than to the monster? How does the weather help foreshadow Victor's failure to achieve his goal? And is revenge ever justified, or should you seek an alternative way to solve the issue?